Satchidananda, tell us about the experiences that you have observed disciples to live, to go through. Would you say that some people are more inclined? Have you observed and helped some disciples to instantly live an enlightenment experience?
If we consider what is enlightenment, this is something which can be glimpsed without much difficulty. We have to understand what we mean by spiritual, perhaps. If I ask you who you are, for example, you'll typically refer to your name, and if we have more time, the work that you do, important relationships, and even more time, perhaps things you like, things you don't like. But if then I meet you a year later, you might have changed your name, you might have changed the things you're interested in, your relationships may have changed. So in this interval, what hasn't changed? What part of you has never changed from one year to the next? And this is what we refer to in yoga as the Anandamaya Kosha, or the spiritual body. So the process of, you might say that becoming enlightened, begins with the recognition of our true self, which is that part of us which never changes, which we might refer to as the seer as opposed to the seen. We might refer to it as the subject as opposed to all the objects of our experience, whether they be objects through the five senses or thoughts or emotions. We might refer to it as the witness, le témoin, the observer, consciousness. Okay? And consciousness, of course, is one of the great mysteries of life because you cannot measure it. It's outside of time and space. It exists everywhere. It exists at all times and all places. So the experience or glimpse of that can occur in deep states of meditation, typically when the mind experiences silence. Okay? In the silence, we experience the spiritual dimension. This is what distinguishes religious traditions from spiritual traditions. Spiritual traditions emphasize silence. Religious traditions emphasize all the forms, whether they be scriptures or texts or architecture or personalities. Now, enlightenment is a permanent state of self-realization where one's perspective has shifted permanently at all times from the perspective of I'm the body, I'm the mind, I'm all my emotions, I'm all my stories, to the perspective of the witness or pure consciousness. So this occurs typically in 4 stages. The first stage, one is cultivating what's called calmness or sattva, equilibrium. And then almost everything we do in yoga, whether it's postures, breathing, meditation, has as its purpose to develop calmness. Calmness becomes the doorway through which one can begin to perceive that inner self, to enter samadhi, as Patanjali refers to it. And postures, for example, can relax the physical body. Breathing can calm the vital body of emotions. Meditation can quiet the mind, for example. And the second stage then becomes one where one begins to be the witness and to witness everything that's happening in daily life. One begins to integrate this awareness in routine activities, in work, even in sleep. And the third stage comes when one begins to realize that I am not the doer, that I am the observer, that everything is happening. For example, if you say, I flew to Florida for vacation. No, you witnessed your body getting on an airplane and all the thousands of people who had contributed to this airline getting you to Florida. So it's not merely yourself who was involved, right? And finally, you reach a stage where you realize yourself as being absolute being, consciousness, and bliss. as the fundamental ground of everything. You realize that you're not merely a wave on the surface of the ocean, different from other waves, but you are actually the ocean itself. That your individuality temporarily manifests in a particular form with different thoughts and experiences, but ultimately merges back into that oneness. And
here you go.
The realization of that realization of oneness, when it's permanent, is the state of enlightenment. So the challenge is not to have so much the initial experience, but to maintain it. And that's what the process of yoga is about. To the extent that you can purify yourself of the manifestations of egoism, whether it be pride, feeling the need to be special, to have special experiences, anger, fear, desire, all these manifestations of ego, to the extent that you let go of them, to that extent you become more and more identified with what you truly are, which is the witness.